justice and peace and equality.
Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. And today we have Mr. Gerald Emerson Rose in the building of the New World. How you doing today, Mr.
All
Rose?
right. Actually, New Order. New Order National Human Rights Organization.
New Order National Rights.
Human Rights
Organization.
Correct.
All right, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Being blessed.
Man, tell us who is Gerald Emerson Rose, and tell us, some of the things New Order is doing in the community right now.
I'm from Toledo, Ohio. My dad was an icon activist. His name was Reverend Floyd Rose.
Okay.
And two of my best friends used to cut his grass. But then what happened was, they said, "Hey, Gerald, you like to go to the store?" I said, "No, I'm going to just chill." So they went to the store and didn't return. They got killed execution style.
Wow.
So my dad did an 18-day fast. And he said, "Son," I knew what my dad was doing when I was younger then. I knew what my dad was doing. He said, "Son, I need you to call a press conference to give them an update on what I'm, of my results.
Okay.
And I'm going on a spiritual fast." So what happened was I went out there and did such a good job. Something in me clicked in me because, first of all, because of the bloodline.
Okay.
Because growing up, our church and house was put on fire. Death threat calls came in. I remember when my dad took me to meet Rosa Parks. She spoke at our church.
Okay.
Minister Farrakhan been in my church. So I was exposed to civil rights as a kid. So what happened is, once my dad called a press conference, I did such a good job. I was like, man, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get my own organization, so I relocated to Atlanta in 2000.
Okay.
And didn't nobody know who I was, but I knew I had this fight in me, the home birth of Dr. King. So what happened was, a teacher in Cobb County called two students the N-word.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what, if Martin Luther King was alive and all that, I know he would have said something. But I remember the late Joseph Lowry said, "Rose, don't mess with no people in Cobb County." I said, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
So I said something. I got the teacher suspended. And also a little girl got suspended with a Tweety Bird chain. I was like, man, this don't seem right. I actually called a press conference down at the King Center, little old Gerald Rose. Then I figured that I can do this.
Right.
And then I started recruiting people.
Okay.
So it went to a human rights organization, to a national human rights organization. New Order's in 17 cities now.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
My goal is to be in every 50 city by the end of the year. I don't know, that's crazy to say, but every day is a blessing, bro.
Okay. Now you're opening up hubs in different cities, right?
Correct.
Tell us about some of your partners, and what are you partnering with people in the community?
No, actually, I'm networking with other organizations.
Okay.
But not partnership with them. I'm doing my own thing.
Okay.
Things like that. I don't have to answer to nobody.
Right.
So what happens, I got one in New York, I got one in Chicago, Illinois, Anderson, Alabama, Mobile, Alabama.
Okay.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. And a lot of these places where I've been, I had cases out there, so they're kind of very familiar with me.
Yes.
When I was in Chicago, it was a young man that got killed by the police, and I had a march in Chicago Heights.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, it ain't like I've been there before.
Right.
And one thing about my organization, we ain't perfect, but I do not quit until I get justice.
Man,
because
you can't quit.
When you file a complaint with my organization, we don't take cases on emotions. We go off facts. When you got facts, you get results.
Wow.
And my dad says, son, when you get involved in a situation, you make sure you don't play with people's lives.
Okay.
So I committed to that. If we can't help you, we can't help you. But if we get involved, we want some solutions.
Now, what type of help does New Order Human Rights Foundation provide?
We deal with racial profiling. We deal with job issues, school issues. Prison reform.
Okay.
Stuff like that. We feel if your rights are being violated, we come for a prime example. In my hometown, Toledo, Ohio, a white teacher forced a 3-year-old little black girl to go outside without a coat on. And this was wintertime, sir. And I was like, that can't be true. She said, yes. So I did my research, did the facts. I said, I'm on my way.
Okay.
And I went up there and got the teacher fired.
Okay.
And it was we was in the Final Call newspaper for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're making some moves, man. We are making some major moves.
Nation of Islam Final Call.
Oh yeah, they provide security for me.
Okay.
And I'm not even a Muslim, but Minister Sharif is the regional director that Minister Farrakhan reports to when he comes to Atlanta.
Okay.
We was on a panel once before. And he was like, brother, who are you? And I explained to him. He said, man, I really like what you're doing, man. He said, if you ever need us, you let me know. I said, why me? Because he said, 'cause first of all, you black.
Yeah.
And you doing the work.
Yeah.
So if I remember when I went to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, exposed to racism on Temple College. And I called Minister Sharif and I said, hey, I'm on my way to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Can you have some security for me?
Okay.
The brothers was waiting on me.
Wow.
When I went to Mississippi, I went to Detroit. Yeah, so that's my, they helped me up because they know I'm doing good work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you were just down in Macon, Georgia,
Yes.
advocating for the inmates.
Okay.
In the jail.
All right. Inmates have rights. Even though you're incarcerated, but you still have rights.
Tell us about that.
What happened was I went down there to announce a local chapter.
Okay.
And I focused on, my agenda was about the jail. Because doing my research, there's a lot of problems with that jail.
Okay.
Not just Macon, Georgia, it's across this country.
Okay.
And I went down there to let them know that there's a new sheriff in town. And that we're going to be very visible. We're going to get into these schools. Like here in Atlanta, what I do, I go into a place called Georgia Works. It's a transitional home.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Georgia Works.
Correct.
Okay.
And I go there every Tuesday, do motivational speaking.
Okay.
Every fifth Saturday, we go to the Bluff.
Okay.
And we serve our people. We don't say feed homeless people. We say serve our people.
Serve our people.
And we do
right.
with the youth.
Right.
Right. And matter of fact, I got, like I said, I have my events coordinator. She live in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
Half my staff members live locally, and half of them works remotely.
Okay.
But it's like we together.
Okay.
So
is New Order like a non-profit organization?
It's non-profit, yes, sir.
All right. Okay. And when did it get started?
It started in 1992.
Okay.
So I've been around for.
You've been around for a minute, man.
But it didn't really kick off because I didn't have the right people.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But now, what God has, because I almost gave up.
Yeah.
I can't do this, man. People, I have conference calls, nobody be on there. Call meetings, nobody come. But now God was like, if you really want to take this to the next level, you need to start getting people like strangers. People are goal-minded people.
Okay.
That want something out of life, not these young people.
Right,
And now, man, I can just tell you, man, the organization is blowing. We're really blowing up.
Man,
we're blowing up.
That's what's up. What's up. Now we got a case. We got cases going on.
Okay.
Tell us about the current case that you're on right now.
There's a case named Leon Moss Jr. He's inside the Fulton County Jail.
Okay.
He was accused of rape.
Okay.
And what happened? Only guilty he was guilty of. He got into a car that was not his.
Okay.
But he drove himself to school.
Right.
Which was stupid what he did. But this mother claimed that he raped her and all that. But one thing about me, if I feel that if some injustice going on, I would take action. So I met with the mother crying, said, Gerald, my son didn't do this. We have alibis, we have all type of witnesses, we got cameras in the neighborhood.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, why is this man still locked up?
Okay.
So as right now, I think they're afraid to let him out because we have a lawsuit. Pending on them.
Okay.
So Fox 5 and followed this news, the story for a while.
Right.
And we told them now what's going on. The judge, we sent the affidavit. What you call that?
The affidavit.
The affidavit. Sorry about that. To the judge to let them know that we're going after the prosecutor.
Okay.
Because of lack of charges you put on our client.
Right.
And the judge did acknowledge this paperwork. She's like, Mr. Rose, we know about this new law, and I'm going to call an emergency meeting.
Okay.
So now that's in the works. So can you imagine how many people's affected by that, man?
Okay.
Can you imagine?
And
then you got another law just passed a couple weeks ago when you hire an attorney, they don't do their work. And you get your money back right away. There's some stuff that's coming through the state of Georgia, these laws.
Well, let's talk about this. Let's go back to that because I believe that law has been in place for a while.
Oh, has it?
I believe people just don't know about it when it comes down to. So most people get the statement of non-refundable retainer.
Okay.
As when I pay a lawyer, I don't get my money back.
That's not true.
That's not true.
If you take them to the Bar Association.
Yes. Okay. So what happens is If you give funds to a lawyer,
okay.
those funds supposed to be held into a trust.
Okay.
And the lawyer's supposed to itemize the work that he does. Let's say the lawyer charges $400 an hour.
Okay.
And as they show and prove the work that they're doing, they can deduct their funds from that retainer.
Oh. Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
And so what happens is, let's just say they only did. Let's say you pay a lawyer $50,000. The lawyer says, "Hey, it's $20,000 to retain me."
Okay.
But they only did $2,000 worth of work.
Okay.
Then that lawyer has to give you back the balance of $18,000. And people don't know that. Man, you know how long lawyers been taking advantage of people, bro?
Oh, I can imagine.
Come on, man.
I can imagine. The lady that we helping out had 3 attorneys. Now they to the point they representing themselves.
Yes. And the thing about
and doing a good job too, man. She's got her paperwork down pat.
Correct.
Order and everything.
Correct.
'Cause I was a little nervous. I said, "You sure you want to do this? Because your son, he's facing 60 years in prison."
Right.
I said, "You sure want to do this?" She said, "Yeah, Mr. Rose. Her son, the one that's locked up, he done learned a lot from the law library inside the jail,
Correct.
You know, and things like that." So she said, "Yeah, they're comfortable with it."
Well, it falls hand in hand with what you're talking about. What's happening in Fulton County?
Okay.
Where where now prosecutors can't just prosecute you on BS.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So it holds the justice system accountable on both sides.
Okay.
Because believe it or not, man, it's been a lot of people. What we know as African American men.
Oh yeah.
It's been a lot of people who have been, shafted by the
true.
system. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So tell us about now you were boots on the ground for the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Oh yeah. Matter of fact, Channel 2, Tom Jones called me.
Okay.
He said, "Would you like to say a comment when the guilty verdict came out?"
Okay.
So I met him and made a comment about it. That is correct, because I went to Brunswick.
Right.
To be a part of the first rally they had in front of the courthouse.
Okay.
With Attorney Molly Davis, Derek Bozeman, and I don't know if you know them.
Yeah, I know Attorney Derek Bozeman.
Yeah, Bozeman. Yeah. So I went down there. So I was very active in that court situation, because her mother spoke in Marietta as well.
Right.
And things like that. So I'm very familiar with that case.
You're very familiar. Okay. Yeah. And so tell us what's going on in your world, Mr. Emerson. Tell us.
To be honest, the reason why we got justice because it was caught on social media. Social media is a powerful tool.
Absolutely.
And I love it.
Absolutely.
You know, when people say, "I don't like Facebook," and I said, "For what?" Well, you cause a problem. You sit there and accept all these crazy friends, these ghetto friends, and your whole timeline is junk. You cause that problem.
Yeah.
It helps New Order out. I didn't recruit a lot of people off of Facebook.
Off of Facebook?
That's why I travel. Yeah, that's why I travel across the country, because of Facebook.
Right.
So I love it because I use it. Why I'm not on there trying to pick people up. I'm on there for business only.
Correct. And you definitely have a movement going on social media. Now tell us, what are some of the injustices that you're seeing humans face in America today?
Well, remember when Michael Vick got in trouble with the dog fighting?
Right.
I think the crime was a little bit too harsh.
Okay.
When he first got in trouble, the media automatically found him guilty through the media.
Okay.
You know, as you know, they do us like that.
Right.
Stuff like that. So what I did was give him a chance. So when I went on Nancy Grace show about the dog fighting case, I said, "Nancy Grace, are you familiar with Patrick Kearney?"
Okay.
She said, "Yes, the white football player for the Falcons." I said, "Yes." "Well, don't you know alleged rape case took place the same time that Michael Vick was accused of fighting dogs? What is more important here?"
Wow.
She was like, no, we're not on here for that. We're not on here for that. Just the fact they wanted to take a black man down.
Right.
Now when Vic came clean, I was a little upset.
Okay.
Because I said, well, you know what? I wrote Michael Vick a letter every week. I said, bro, keep your head up. Life is gonna be good. And then everybody was like, "Gerald, why are you supporting him? He's a dog killer and all." Peter came after me.
Yeah.
Peter was death. I mean, they was sending hate mail to my P.O. box. "You supporting a dog killer?" I said, but what happened was once he got incarcerated, I took a tour to these animal rights organization, hey, well, you give Michael Vick a second chance.
Okay.
You know, once he pays his debt to society.
Right,
You know, and a lot of us like, all this or whatever. But at the same time, his dream came true. Look at him now. He's debt-free now. He came back. He came out and signed a contract with the Eagles.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
and I remember that letter I sent him. People said, Mr. Rose, you're wasting your time on Michael Vick. Now, his brother is a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Marcus seemed like he didn't never get it.
Nah,
You know
Marcus never got it.
Yeah.
Marcus never got
I
it.
hung in there with him, but I never met Michael Vick. But one time when he was in town signing autographs, they got out of prison.
Okay.
I said, Mike Vick, New Order.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's how that organization was supporting me. I said, New Order, Gerald Rose. He said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he told the security to bring me up there.
Okay.
And he started crying. He said, bro, I don't know who you is, man, but you never gave up on me. And I promise you, I really thank you for sending me these letters, and I thank God for you. And anything I can do, please let me know.
Right.
And it hit him hard because I was on that case, man. I was on it.
Wow.
Getting chewed out, getting cussed out, all that, man. It was big, man. But because I seen something in him because he wasn't really a bad person.
At all.
He did a lot of stuff off the field with kids and stuff.
Okay.
So it wasn't his brother.
Okay.
So I looked at him as far as overall person that Mike Vick was.
Yeah.
But then once he got incarcerated, he started admitting that when he didn't study the game films and all that. So he kind of came out with a lot of negative stuff.
Okay.
You know, but jail really turned his life around.
Okay.
You know, but I just thank God that I had a chance to speak on that.
To speak on that.
Correct.
Now we just got in a situation where Puff Daddy was man, you know, Puff Daddy been all over the news, man.
Right.
Found guilty on 2 counts and
right.
not guilty on 3 major, man. Do you feel like it was a major injustice that happened?
Can I be honest with you?
Talk to me, man.
I think he did this stuff. It's just they didn't present the case right.
Okay.
I said, you know, they losing this case.
Right.
They didn't prove, because everything was dealt with adults. It was consensual. They didn't prove they was messing with kids.
Yeah.
Now, R. Kelly's something different.
Okay.
You know, so they messed it up from the beginning.
Okay.
They had to do that by law to not found them not guilty.
But it seems to be an attack on black men during the
Of
public
course.
media. I mean, Tyler Perry.
But Puffy, man, the stuff that I seen him do was uncalled for.
Okay.
You know, and then when R. Kelly got in trouble, just when black men get in trouble, they go after them.
Yeah.
We under attack. That's
Yeah.
why I keep myself clean. Why would I go out and drink and try to drive? I'm not going to give them no reason.
I got you.
You got to stay above water.
You got to.
And my dad said, son, you make sure, you know, that you be honest with yourself, because if you go out and do something negative,
that's right,
they gonna come after you. Like when my son got in trouble.
Okay.
They had him all in the paper, had me all on the news, civil rights activist son accused of doing this. So I know things can happen. You're a target.
Right.
So you have to be careful when you're in the spotlight.
Right. Now you traveling across the world, but specifically you're in rural, progressive Georgia, South Georgia. We talking about a red state. Okay. You know, cow fields and everything.
You know, we helped get Forest Parks. We got a street named Barack Obama in Valdosta, Georgia.
Okay, yeah, I am familiar with that. Okay,
yeah, my dad was leading in that till he got sick.
Okay,
and I went down and spoke in front of city council.
Okay,
down there. So
we ain't talking
about Atlanta, Georgia. We talking about South.
We talking about South Georgia. That's what I'm saying. So we talking about somewhere where Kendrick Johnson was rolled up in a mat.
Correct.
You know, how was it for you going out there in a climate where, I mean, Valdosta is still crying.
To be honest, man, what I seen what my dad went through and what we went through, don't nothing faze me. Okay, I'm a strong man. Only one I have to answer to is God. That's the only one I fear.
That's right.
I don't fear no man and woman, because my dad says, son, if you get into this business,
okay,
you can't be scared.
Right.
You know, I said, you know what? If it's worth taking my life, you know, I want to have freedom for my kids.
Okay.
You know, because I'm doing this for my grandkids and stuff. I'm not doing it for the fame and all. I'm doing it for the future.
For the future.
Because somebody did it for us.
Absolutely,
you know?
absolutely.
So, but I don't fear nothing now. I do have a security guard, permanent. I just hired him maybe like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
You know, it's just the presence. And
matter
of fact, we had a meeting this past Saturday to the community talking about these new laws that's been passed.
Yeah.
And he was there posted.
Yeah.
So you just ain't gonna run up on me.
Absolutely.
So I do know the seriousness of this If you're doing the real work and you touch issues that's talking about change, you're going to be a threat.
Yeah,
you know, especially if it's affecting somebody's pocket.
Oh, definitely.
That money, you feel me?
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I'm all about that.
Man.
I'm all about boycotting, man. I don't really rally and march no more because it's not affected like it used to be.
Oh, it's definitely not affected.
Yeah, it's like I attended a Black Panther Party rally about 2 years ago. I said, I said, excuse me, why don't we take this in front of Walmart or something and shut them down for the day?
Right.
Oh, no, we can't do that. I'm like, that's when you being effective. That's when you know, getting your point across. Because until we don't affect them with our money, we useless.
Man, we got to go to a commercial break, man. We got Gerald Emerson Rose, New Order Human Rights Foundation. You guys stay tuned. Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. You guys stay tuned.
Justice and peace and equality. Now the world they will see. That's why.